Hello, this is Fredo, and you're watching the 16th episode of Santa Filomena, which will be the last this year before we take a little break and meet each other again on this series next year, literally. But before then, you will see me developing a new district in this episode. I've been thinking for a while to develop this side of the city, which is like some kind of delta-ish area opening to the sea on the other side of the modern center. And for some reason I thought I would develop it in some kind of shell shape or some kind of calzone shape. That's why I decided to name it Calzonia. And I have to say I had quite some fun designing this new neighborhood with very small country roads. It's only like the outside, like the borders connection, I would say, that are main roads, and the inner district roads are very small country roads, because I want this new neighborhood to have some kind of rural feeling, not completely as if it was like a little town or country village, but some sort of maybe secluded, or an area that would look and feel apart from the rest of the city. And obviously it naturally is, because you have to cross the bridge over to get to that place. And I wanted to enhance that difference with the rest of the city, the not only through the location, but from the aesthetical aspect of it. So there will be more work to be done on it over time. It's gonna be kind of like the one I developed a couple of episodes ago, which is further down the Violin District. I actually don't think I've come up with a name for this one. I got a new one that I built in this episode, and I already have given the name right when I did it. And there's a few districts that I did like quite a while ago now that I still don't have names for, and that's still including the new industrial district. I also found out, as you just saw, that some roads were still destroyed from the was it the tsunamis, or no, the earthquakes. The earthquakes actually turned some roads unusable anymore, and so if you don't pay attention, the different buildings on these streets get abandoned, and there's no activity on these streets anymore. But because those were right in the center, oddly enough, because they were hidden by pretty high buildings, I couldn't really notice then, and it took me that many episodes, like at least a good 4 or 5 episodes, because I don't remember when the earthquakes happened. I think it was 4 episodes ago or something like that. I also had to develop a bit more the new industrial district, because the industrial demand is getting higher. We didn't gain that many new inhabitants in the city. I think the figures concerning these is they are quite stable, because at some points I lose some inhabitants, and at some points some new ones arrive. so there's not been much movement in there, but the needs are still being very variant from one episode to another, I think. And in this episode, there's particularly been quite some movement in terms of those needs, residential, commercial, and industrial. I would say mainly commercial and industrial in this episode. But yeah, it's quite interesting to have this happening despite your um, population not flowing and not expanding or growing as much. I also tried during this episode to place some unique buildings that I still had not placed, and as you know, so many of them have some specific requirements for you to get a hold of them and be able to place them in your city. And those requirements can be so varied and so different. I try to fill some of these criteria and manage to get quite a few new skyscrapers that I placed in the modern center. You're gonna see that later on. But yeah, there's still quite a few cool, unique buildings that I would need to find ways to get a hold of. So yeah, still some criteria to meet, like well, it's going pretty fast there. I'm not sure if you can see, but depending on the kind of building you want, it requires you to have some specific square footage. Would you call that like this? I don't know, because in my country it's square meters. So a certain area of commercial buildings, for example, and then some buildings you would need certain figure as expenses into transports and stuff like that. So these are criteria that I've still not met yet, because probably because my city and the whole place doesn't have that many inhabitants yet. It doesn't have that much activity yet. But I found out as I was talking, yeah, as I told you earlier about the few new skyscrapers that I managed to place in this episode. It was only thanks to placing a new car, not even a new, just one cargo harbor that I didn't have. I didn't place before, and so I put it there because I always wanted it to have it by the industrial district. It obviously makes sense, and so this gave me way to placing a few more skyscrapers into the modern city. I'm not sure if I'm very satisfied with them. I'm not so much of a skyscraper guy, but then obviously you want your city, well, depending on the project, you want your city to have as many and as varied districts and skyline as possible, literally. So sometimes it takes stuff that you're not necessarily a fan of to place in your city to make it well, nice looking and more functional than it probably would be if you only stuck to elements you particularly prefer in the game. Also, I have to say I've not been looking at modes in such a while. I just haven't had the time to do this lately and look at the newest stuff that's been put on the workshop. Which is kind of a shame because I've been thinking about doing this for the last 3 or 4 episodes at least, and I I just I just don't have time lately to be doing this. We got hit by a new natural disaster in this episode as well. I was talking about them earlier, funnily enough, and then this happened. It was first time this happened to the city, to the Santa Filomena. It's a violent thunderstorm, a strong thunderstorm. It's been mentioned on the top of the screen. And so lightning struck violently different parts of the city, setting places on fire. Odd places. And the interesting thing is that some parts of it were struck only on a very specific point, like one single tree in the middle of the hill or stuff like that. It was funny to look at. Obviously, because the game is speeded up there, maybe you must have seen it very, very quickly. This one didn't last for long, but then I remember going back around the city to check out the different places where it struck. And obviously when it struck only one tree and the tree was set on fire, then the fire spread. So that's what we just got to see now. I've been wondering quite a bit in this episode. Not that I was lacking ideas or imagination, but it was mainly because of this unique building fever that I got, and I wanted to get those buildings, especially, for example, this Cathedral of Plenitude, it's called. I really didn't have any idea where to put it in the city. You don't obviously want a place like this to be at the heart of the city center, and I wanted it to be placed in a quieter place. And at first, I put it in the valley, but I thought this is the opposite of the city center. The valley is just too quiet and peaceful to be having such a monument like this. And then I thought a good compromise would be to be placing it between the violin and the new district that I created further down a few episodes ago. It's facing the sea, so that's pretty cool, I guess. And this was one of the requirements, I remember, to be able to place other unit buildings. So the system of the game in this regard is quite curious, because some requirements are quite odd, I would say. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. I also found out that I still didn't have an expo center, so I thought it was about time I placed a building like this in the city. And usually places like that are quite separated from residential areas or even industrial. They're usually by a motorway or larger connections between um, far away places, and so I thought this spot would be the best one for a hole like this, a building like this. The aquarium, I thought about placing it as well at some point, but then I dropped the idea because just like for the cathedral, I couldn't come up with proper places where to place. Could, uh, could, couldn't come up with proper idea where to place it. Sorry. And there's lots of other places, I guess, where I could put it, but none that are available at the moment because the map is not even 50% purchased yet. Most of the tiles have not been opened, so I have to remember not to rush. But in the same time, with me thinking about the plan of having a little break from the game for a while, I thought I would kind of show up a little bit and try to place and create new stuff before going on the holidays. Kind of. It's not like it's gonna be the end of a season or something, but let's say it's the end of part 1 for this game. 16 episodes is fine, and I'm quite happy with what I've done so far. So that will be it for Santa Filomena this year. Thank you very much for following. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will be back in a few weeks' time in 2022. Bye bye.